and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A light room tonight because of the weather, and we just got news that our clerk likely won't make the meeting. So in the absence of the clerk, would someone be willing to serve and or nominate?
I make a motion to nominate Trustee Lay to be clerk for tonight's meeting.
Support.
Motion by Brown, support by Thering. Any other discussion? Thanks for being willing.
Thank
All
you.
all in favor of Trustee Lay serving as our clerk this evening, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you again. Motion passes unanimously. Temporary clerk Lay.
All
You want the
right.
title, or you prefer
I'm
trustee?
good. Trustee's fine. Supervisor Milkey.
Here.
Clerk Cody is excused. Treasurer Rogers.
Here.
Trustee Brown.
Here.
Trustee Lannon.
Here.
Trustee Lay. Here. Trustee Thering.
Here.
Thank you. Somewhat light agenda as far as the number of items, but I'm happy to entertain motions.
Move to approve the agenda.
Support.
Motion by Rogers, support by Brown. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion to approve the agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. We have an agenda. There are no presentations tonight,
No presentations.
no public hearings, so we'll open up public comment at 7:02 p.m. Public comment is restricted to 3 minutes regarding items on this agenda. If you choose to address the public, please state your name and address for the record.
We have a couple people on Zoom, Nathan, Tara, which is our Tara, Rodney, which is our Rodney, but I don't see any hands raised.
If you would like to address public comment, take an opportunity to raise your hand through the Zoom features. Give it just a minute, just in case. Nothing?
No raised hands.
Let the record show nobody's in person, in attendance, and those that are connected remotely, no one's asking for the floor. So we'll close public comment at 7:03 p.m. That takes us to report boards comments, current list of boards and commissions. I did send out an email today, just kind of a summary of what seats we have open, which ones are coming fast due now. And I probably didn't keep the email for myself. I'll try to go from memory here.
Yeah, these?
We have, I'm sorry. Oh, I do have
Okay.
mine, but yeah.
Good.
I tried to take notes for myself to make it easier, but how about we start with EDA if anybody is so moved.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion for Richard Bars and for the EDA. And his term, I might need help on this one.
2/13/29.
His term ending 2/13/2029.
Support.
Motion by Brown, support by Lannon. Discussion?
I know Richard Bars personally, and I think he's an excellent person in the community, and he's been he's served on our boards. And I was able to serve with him on a board, and I think Richard does an awesome job. I couldn't say any more about it.
I'll echo those comments. Serving with Rick on the EDA, and I'm glad he's asking to re-up. So I certainly support his nomination. Any other discussion? So the motion on the floor was to nominate Rick Bars for term ending 2/15.
2/13.
2/13?
I believe I've got
29.
13, yeah.
29.
Yeah.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Rick Bars is reappointed.
Excellent.
6 yeas.
I'm making sure that I had, because I had it 6, and I was like, is that the right number of A's? It is. We're good.
Are you good on the motion?
I'm
to
good
move
on the motion. Yes,
Okay.
Brown and Lannon, we're good.
Let's see. We have Planning Commission. I did, again, on the email today, hopefully that was helpful to see that ahead of time. But we have 2 spots. We actually have 3 spots opening because of the rotation on the Planning Commission on the 15th, I believe, of this month. 2 members we appointed within the last 6 months have reapplied because they were filling seats at that point. And then 1 other seat where we have Commissioner Paul Gross, who is essentially retiring from Planning Commission, and I've had an opportunity to serve with Paul Gross on ZBA and on Planning Commission, and I'm really grateful for his service. So thank you to him. I hope he enjoys his retirement from the Planning Commission. But with that, we have an applicant for that. So I'd like to start with the 2 that are reapplying that were newly appointed this past year. So I'd like to nominate John Hayes to the Planning Commission. Can someone help me with a
2/15/28.
for term ending 2/15/28?
Yep.
Support.
Motion by the chair, support by Lannon. Other comments? Discussion? I'm looking at Trustee Thering. Only because you serve with them.
Absolutely been wonderful serving with John and Philip.
Any other comments?
I've worked with John. I think very highly of him. I think he's a good, I've worked with both of them, and I like them both very much.
I highly recommend
I
that
think
we.
they're both good.
Yeah.
They're both assets.
Yep.
So with that, the motion was for John Hayes,
Yes.
2/15/28.
15/28.
Thank you again.
Yeah.
All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. John D. Hayes is appointed to the term indicated. Philip Brown also reapplying for spot, same term, so 2/15/28. Be happy to nominate Philip Brown for the Planning Commission, ending on that term.
Support?
Motion by the chair, support by Brown. Discussion?
Nope.
I don't know Philip, other than I've talked to him a few times on the phone, since he's been commissioner even, and he seemed to really be enjoying it.
Very engaged, very active, and I'm glad he is on our planning commission.
He's very passionate about serving his community, which I think is a really good quality to have in somebody who's on a board.
Yeah, and he's a bit of a nerd too, which is great.
I like nerds.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion to appoint Philip Brown, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Philip Brown is appointed to the Planning Commission. We have one other application, we have one other opening. This happens to be, at least the way I viewed it, the Paul Gross seat. Everett Bradshaw, I have talked to him a few times on the phone, been very engaging. One of the items I appreciated about Everett is that he would bring agricultural community thoughts with him, because that was one of the things Paul Gross brought to the Planning Commission that we're losing with him leaving. And Everett has that farm mentality that I think will help represent that part of our community. In full disclosure, if you're not already aware, Everett Bradshaw is spouse of our trustee Lay.
Oh, yes.
And well, with that, I'm going to go, unless there are objections, I'm going to nominate Everett Bradshaw for the same term indicated before for Planning Commission, 2/15/28.
Yes.
I'm going to support. Oh, we both are.
I think I heard Lannon first.
Yeah, you did.
Motion by the chair, support by Lannon.
I'm going to recuse myself from this vote.
That seems reasonable. Do the trustees have any objection to the recusal?
No.
No objection.
No objection.
Any other comments? Anybody know Everett?
I agree with the points that you made. He's also relatively new blood into the area, so he'll bring some more global
Perspective.
global experiences to the area to draw off us.
If I recuse myself, am I allowed to make comments? Or
No,
You
no,
are.
no debate.
Okay,
Sorry. Goes with the recusal.
it's fine. I was just asking about procedure.
Yes.
He would've-
Any other comments? All in favor of the appointment of Everett Bradshaw to the Planning Commission, term ending 2/15/28, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Everett Bradshaw is appointed to the Planning Commission.
He would have come tonight, but he was putting away ducks and geese.
Speaking of that farming perspective,
He's my unpaid intern.
let's see. In my email, I think there was only the other one that I addressed in the email. EDA, let me just make a note, a reminder again, we have an open seat because of Jeff Sweet, retiring from the EDA. I just want to give him props again and a thank you. And at least he indicated to me, he's only leaving the EDA board because his girls are getting to be teens and they're very active in sports, and he wants to be able to attend those events. So thank you to Jeff for that. Maybe someday we'll get his voice back.
So we have a vacancy.
We have a vacancy in the EDA. And just as a reminder, EDA is not public at large. They need to be either a business owner or a resident within one of our 2 DDA districts. And there's exceptions to that. We're allowed 1 or 2 members on the EDA, but ideally we want them to be part of the district. So because of that, it's a little tougher to fill those spots too. What I didn't check with Jeff is to see if he'd continue until we fill his spot, but it seems like most meetings lately, he's had to leave by a certain time
Right.
to take care of family. We have a CRC application. Trustee Lay has expressed interest in that. And I tried to indicate in the email a little bit today that the CRC hasn't met for we don't know how long. And so they really kind of need to be able to stand that board back up. But I'm happy to take nominations.
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Trustee Lay for the CRC, term ending, I might need a little help with that.
12/31/25.
12/31 of 2025.
It's a 3-year term though.
Except it's filling a seat that's been vacated.
Oh,
So
okay.
you finish
I
the
see.
term
Okay, thank
essentially.
you.
I'd support that.
Yep.
Motion.
Thank you.
Motion by Brown, support by Lannon, and just a note on the term, as you just mentioned, when we appoint from within to our various boards, we can change those at any time. So if it's not working for Trustee Lay to do it, and we want someone from this board, let's say,
Mhm.
we have that right to do that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's not locked in the same way as if we appointed someone from at large
Yeah.
publicly.
Right.
Right.
Just like our own liaison appointments to things, right?
Yeah. I think Trustee Lay
But I-
would be an excellent start to this board and to bring us some light.
Yeah, I'd really like to see some strong communications built between
Absolutely.
Township and the CRC board, and
Mhm.
I'm really thankful that you're willing to step up. You do have the lightest liaison role, which is good, so this puts a little more on your plate. So I'm certainly supportive of this discussion.
Just like you to report back when you find out what the calendar is for the meetings for
From
2025.
talking to Rodney, and I knew that we hadn't had meetings, so I'm also on the Farmers Market Advisory Board for the City of Mount Pleasant, which is a completely unofficial role, but I talked a little bit to Phil, who's the leader of Parks and Rec over there yesterday, and he said they hadn't met in forever, so we'll see what we can see.
Thank you.
And I believe he's the one member that's been showing up for the
Yes,
meetings. even
he
though-
and
yeah.
Rodney are the only people who've been showing up for the meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was interesting.
I'll reach out and try to find out who the county rep is to.
Actually, already got that information.
You did?
Yes.
May I ask now during our debate?
According to the email that I received, because I mentioned to Phil that I was trying to figure out who all the representatives were. And he's like, I have a list. He emailed it to me. So.
Okay, great.
It's supposed to be Stephen Sweeney.
He termed out though.
So he termed out. So now I've got to go see if I can figure out. That's the problem.
That's the last county one I knew.
Yeah.
Where's Frank when you need him?
Well, we talked to Frank about this. So we talked to Frank about this at the intergovernmental
Sorry,
meeting as
Frank.
well.
Right.
He's probably behind your curtain.
So
No,
we'll have to talk
he's a
to
good guy.
Brian.
Yes, he is.
Yes.
Brian or Frank and see if we can figure out what's going on with that.
Yeah. In fact, I'll mention this later because we're in discussion. But any other discussion on the nomination of Trustee Lay?
I just want to kind of say out loud that we did have an applicant that was not on the board, and then, so what we're doing is, because we want a closer tie with the CRC, we are going to make it we would like to make it a board appointment, that's why. Somebody from the board, okay,
Yeah. Well said.
okay.
Yeah, I think it's important that we get that CRC
Yep.
board stood up and having somebody that with a little more clout as an elected official would, I think helps a lot with that. So yeah, I'm anxious to
See if we can get some movement.
assist in whatever way the township can and have your reports and the board comments, or the board reports.
Hopefully I can make a report on the next report,
All right, assuming we pass this.
assuming we pass it.
Any other discussion? All in favor of appointing Trustee Lay as our appointment to the CRC, term ending 12/31/2025?
Do I need to recuse myself again?
No, I don't
Okay.
think that's a money thing,
Okay.
potential for money, right? You want to ask the board, I guess?
Do you guys want me, are
You're
you
more
guys
than
okay with me?
I have no problem with
voting
you
for
voting
myself?
on
I have no issue.
No
Okay.
issue.
with that.
All right.
Generally, you're here to vote on the issues.
Okay.
And
All right, all in favor of the motion to appoint Trustee Lay to the CRC, term ending 12/31/2025, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Let's see. My apologies, I should have printed it off my own email. Is anybody, am I forgetting something with our appointments
That's everything that's on the little mini list.
that I put out? Okay.
Yeah, this is everything on the list, so I think we're good.
Okay, and then I did send out the other appointments that we made. For example, Treasurer Rogers to the Road Commission, Trustee Thering to the Planning Commission. Did those all look correct to
Yep.
everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
City, yep.
So I do want to mention the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe appointments, and I tried to put this in the email, but I didn't get into too much verbiage on it. Everybody's always welcome to those. Always. I encourage you, if you're available, and you can come to the roundtables or the distribution or any of the tribal events like the Day of Remembrance, that kind of show of support from the township is really important to the tribe.
Where would we find that calendar?
At their website.
Okay.
But the distribution is kind of by invite, so that's if we get awarded a 2%, then we'll be getting an email.
Okay.
Yeah, because you were on that one, right? We'll make sure that
Yeah.
as we get close to all that you're getting
Okay.
those emails.
Okay.
So just one question, Brian, for
Yes.
clarification. You talked about the one seat on the EDA board. No appointments because of no applications at this point?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you know nobody that has an interest in serving, encourage them.
Right. And there generally are some stipulations that go along with being qualified to be on that board.
Residing in the districts, either east or west, or a business owner. That's the main requirement.
Just residing, not ownership of a business?
Residing being a residence, that's enough.
Oh,
Because there are areas of the East EDA that are just neighborhood. you have an interest in the district is the idea behind it, right?
Great.
Do I need to make a note of that, that we need an applicant, or is that just,
No, you don't have to get that
Okay.
detailed.
okay.
Motions are the big things to get down. Moving on then,
Mhm.
board member reports. Trustee Therian,
None this evening, thank you.
Trustee Brown.
Oh, I'm embarrassed to say this. I did go to the Monday's city commission meeting. The notes are at home on my desk. I will report on the next meeting the major things. There wasn't a lot, short meeting, but I'm not even going to put my mouth and try to guess. I'll bring my notes back to the next meeting. I apologize.
We'll hold our breath.
Hold your breath, please. All yours.
Trustee Lannon.
Yeah, I have reports. Attended the Isabella County Board of Commissioners meeting, February 4th at 5 o'clock at the Commission on Aging building, and give you the highlights of it. There were many nominations to boards, as like what we were doing here, and I'll let you know what those boards are. They appointed a person to the Great Lakes Bay Michigan Workforce Development Board for a 2-year appointment, and then the rest of the boards are county boards. They made appointment to the Board of Public Works, the Commission on Aging Advisory Board, the 911 Advisory Board for a county representative, made 2 appointments to the Materials Recovery Facilities Advisory Board, made an appointment to the Planning Commission, appointment to Veteran Affairs, appointment to Construction Board of Appeals, 3 appointments to the Human Rights Committee. And that took care of the appointments. Then they had a number of other items. One thing that struck me as nice and interesting, every motion they made was a unanimous decision of 7-1.
7-1. That's not unanimous.
Excuse me.
7-0.
Yeah. 7-0.
So is
Okay.
there
Thank
another
you.
commission I don't know
Did I say
about?
something?
Yeah.
Good catch. I appreciate that. So some of the highlights were there were 2 motions, separate motions, but kind of dealt with the same thing. They made increases to their budget to cover severance pay due to permanent layoffs and vacation pay and sick time payouts for the Isabella County deputies, sergeants, and detectives. And so that was about a $260,000 plus cost
For severance.
for losing our road service patrol. There was an amendment to the Renewable Ready Communities Award in the amount of $395,000. And my understanding, the amendment was to increase the megawatt capabilities for the Mission Road Solar Project. There was also a zoning amendment which amended language of the zoning ordinance related to workable battery energy storage systems and renewable energy ordinance amendments. So a little updated language in the zoning amendment there. And they have set a special meeting for Tuesday, March 11th with the purpose of a goal-setting meeting. And that's going to take place scheduled at 2 p.m. or as soon as, if it runs late, the meeting prior to that, the Finance Committee meeting and meeting of the whole, it will take place right after that. And it's a work session generally to generate ideas, kind of a work session there. And that pretty much concludes the highlights of the county meeting. I also attended a meeting with the road commission that several of this board attended to discuss the projects that Union Township would like to consider. And that's where we meet over at the road commission facility and talk about what is a reoccurring annually in the brine contracts and the gravel road that we work on. And then they give us information on the conditions of all the roads in the township for us to consider appropriating monies for improvements. And that were the highlights there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Trustee Lake,
I've got nothing.
Treasurer Rogers.
I go to my first road commission meeting tomorrow.
At 9 o'clock? Awesome. I hope that's a good experience.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be.
Real brief, I did have a question for you, Trustee Land, if that's all right. The solar project, a lot of that is really dictated by at the state level now. So that expansion you talked about as far as kilowatts, is that something that the state is driving? Did they discuss that?
I don't have that information for sure. I took it as capacity was going to be expanded. At whose direction, I don't know.
Okay,
But it did incur some cost to do that.
right. Well, ideally it pays for itself, right?
Eventually.
There was discussion during that meeting about revenues coming in from the solar and wind, and the commissioners were very pleased in the amounts that were coming in.
They were? Okay,
Yeah.
good. Thank you. I'm just looking at my notes. Trustee Lannon mentioned the road commission, and maybe you said it and maybe I missed it. There were one other road that I think got some legs underneath it, that the county road commission was not recommending, which was Lincoln Pickard to River, correct? There was at least some discussion that if we chose to appropriate additional funds for roads, that might be a good target mile to look at.
Pickard to River?
Pickard to River on Lincoln. I think the Pacer rating on it was 5, 4? Do you remember? I think I have it here.
I believe it was lower than that. It was
Oh,
the
yeah.
lowest
I thought it was-
one
yeah.
that we had on our
Good.
list.
I do know for those that didn't go, you've
thought-
not seen the emails yet on that, right?
No.
We do have the documents, we'll get those out so you can look over
Yeah.
them.
They were gonna send us the other email too that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe you've seen that, yeah. Correct?
We
I'll
did
ask
not,
him, I'll
no.
ask him tomorrow.
Okay. So I'm assuming once we get that, then the whole packet will go out to the entire board. Yeah, you can ask them tomorrow.
I have a
Great,
question.
and there were a couple dates that we needed to get back to them with what we wanted to do.
Yes.
A March and an April date.
A few months ago, we had a citizen talk about the corner of Lincoln and 20, how the turn lanes are offset. And since then, I've had at least 2 people come up and ask me about that, because it's very difficult if you're in a low-profile vehicle, even in a bigger vehicle, depending on what's on the other side. You can't make that left turn safely without seeing. And was there any thought given to maybe making a turn signal, a green arrow?
That was not discussed there, if that's what you're asking. Do you know, are you aware of?
Just right down this intersection right here.
Like
By
a high-
McDonald's, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that would involve MDOT.
Oh, okay.
And because that's 20, so it'd be the road commission and MDOT.
Okay.
I think, Manager Stuhldreher was aware of this, right? He was.
Yeah, he was one who had, I don't know who brought our attention to the letter, but for some reason, and I've noticed that too, you could potentially take your own life in your hands by making that left turn whichever way you're going, because you just can't see,
I actively avoid that turn if I can,
Right.
because I
So-
drive a Honda Fit.
On a busy day, you may get one, maybe two people make the turn. It's just, I don't think we're gonna do any reconstruction of grinding and adding more width or whatever, so, would the solution be putting in a turn arrow?
But didn't they talk about doing from the bridge to High?
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
pushing for that because the EDA, I had brought up at the road commission meeting that the EDA would like to see completion of the Lincoln project from Chippewa River Bridge up to Remus.
Oh, well, that might
And
kind of
that's,
take care of itself.
that's
yeah.
been under discussion for some time. It is, from what I took from the meeting, it has not been engineered yet. They don't have easements yet. I'm going to try to paraphrase myself. I said, by the time the Paisley rating gets down 2 years from now and it needs to be done, we could be using that time to do the engineering on it.
Right.
I just think
And
there
get
should
ready
be
for it.
some consideration, at least until then, to put a turn arrow or something, because we don't need to have a fatality.
Can I ask you a question? Are you talking about coming from the south going north?
North and south, doesn't matter which
Both
way,
ways?
which
Okay.
doesn't really matter. I pretty much go this way, because that's where I come from, but
And then turning left onto 20?
turning left onto 20.
Would you be willing to draft an email to our manager
Sure,
and just,
yeah.
and then any response, we can just all
Yeah.
see it that way? Just say, is any more discussion that he's
Yeah.
aware of happened on this? Because you're not aware of it, and you can
No, I
attend the road
wasn't
commission
aware of it.
meetings.
But I do think we'd probably have to discuss that with MDOT,
Yeah,
because I believe that's probably an MDOT light there on that corner,
Yeah.
and they would have control over. the-
sure. I mean, yeah, I didn't know.
Which is something we can do,
Yeah. I just think that's a potential, there's potential for something bad to happen there, and
There's been some nasty wrecks there too. I mean, some of the worst wrecks I've seen over there.
oh, really? I did not know about the wreck, so,
Yeah, you're right, I've seen a few.
There have been a
now that I
few
think
really
about
like,
it.
or you'll see parts of cars,
yeah.
and you're like, oh, that must have been bad.
Yeah, I guess the
Yeah.
other day I was driving through there and there was a bunch of car parts on the ground, but I have no idea if that was from a turn or somebody rear-ended somebody or
it's
something like
just-
that.
I remember there being like a really bad, right after we moved here, there was a really bad wreck
Yeah.
there.
Interesting.
Okay, thank you.
I agree.
So, just note, finishing my report, my intent is to call Mr. Allwood tomorrow, because I very much appreciate his application. I'm happy with the decision the board made. I think that's something that needs to be done the way we did it for now, at least. So I want to reach out and thank him tomorrow, so, and explain that to him as well. That it had no reflection on his application. And lastly, we have quarterly intergovernmental meetings, right? And that typically includes the county, the city, the township, occasionally CMU, and very often the tribe. And that's usually attended by 1 or 2 staff people plus 1 or 2 elected officials from each of those entities, some combination thereof. Today I was having conversations with county chair, and we've agreed to have coffee on a semi-regular basis. I just want to see if there's no objections to that. I don't have a specific agenda,
Right.
but I'd like to keep those communication channels open so that if they need to talk to us about something or vice versa. So if there are those issues that we need to chat, that's another avenue for us.
I think anything that de-silos our community is a good thing.
Right. I just wanted to be full transparency that he and I had agreed to meet for some coffees, and again, no agenda at all at this point, other than just building that relationship. Okay, So moving on, consent agenda. Who had paid warrants? You did, Trustee Therian, correct?
Yep.
Y'all
To
look
the
good?
best of my ability, I am satisfied.
Uh,
Looks good.
Happy to entertain any motions for consent agenda.
Move to accept?
Support?
Motion by Rogers, support by Brown. Everybody saw the minutes. Everything looked good?
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
All in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
I will say, I really appreciate the little check marks where you know, when you're looking through the receipts and you see the tax. And just a little, it makes it so much easier, because I could sit there forever and go, where is it? It's right there. Thank you.
Yep. Motion passes unanimously. That takes us to new business. Item A, Springbrook Townhomes Pilot Percentage Reduction Request. Acting Manager Smith, do you have anything you'd like to introduce on this?
I just have a short introduction, and it introduces A and B together.
Sure.
Because they're kind of one and the same. I mean, I know they'd be two different motions, but. So beginning on page 25 of your packet, the action you are requested to consider tonight is the reduction of the pilot percentages for Springbrook Townhomes, Phase 1 and 2, and Cranbrook Senior Village. Springbrook Townhomes and Cranbrook Senior Village are located on Isabella Road, just south of Bluegrass Road, on the west side of the road. Currently, they're operating under a payment in lieu of taxes, which is a pilot program in which the property pays an annual service charge in lieu of property taxes. In return, these properties provide low-income housing for individuals and families in Union Township. They provide safe and affordable housing for, families, and they need a little help once in a while. The service charge at Springbrook Townhomes 1 and 2 is currently at 10%. At Cranbrook Senior Living, the service charge is currently at 9% of annual shelter rents. And the properties were sold in January of 2024. Since then, the property owners have identified several capital improvements that need to be done at the properties that were neglected by the previous owners. So they're asking to help finance these capital improvements. They've requested that the pilots be reduced from 10 and 9 to 4%. And that would allow the owners to help the owners to make these updates to the properties. Some of the updates that they listed were new roofs, work on the fencing, the landscaping, repairs to the overall property, and then updates to the units, which apparently it's been quite some time since those have been done. If the reduction is approved, the new pilot percentage would begin in January of 2026 and remain in effect until December 31st of 2040 for Springbrook, and then December of 2043 for Cranbrook. That's not an extension of that time, that's what they currently are now. They're not asking for an extension of that time, they're just asking for a reduction in the percentage. And in addition, they have been in discussions with MISHDA about their agreements to help fund some of those projects. They would also be working with MISHDA to make some adjustments to those agreements for additional revenues to help with some of those. And those would not start, from my understanding from the paperwork, the current tenants that live in the apartments now that are under this program, it would not change their rents or the way that their rent is figured until for 3 years, or until an apartment is vacated and then re-rented, and those could change sooner. But anybody that's living there would be 3 years. And so the revenue, just a quick revenue impact of the requested reduction, and these are based on the 2023 pilot numbers. I know that you all saw the spreadsheet that Finance Director Teal did, which was a very nice job on that. Is estimated to be approximately $54,000 a year, That's to all of the taxing entities. And Union Township's loss to the general fund and the fire fund would be approximately $2,800 a year. And that's based on the 2023 pilots. You know, that can change based on what they're ready, the rent, that calculation is for the annual service charge. But that gives you an idea. And then our development, is he still on? Rodney, or Mr. Nanny is also on via Zoom, in case you have any questions that you would like to ask him as well. Okay, thank you.
So I'll just say that Clerk Cody, Treasurer Rogers, and myself met Monday and had some lengthy discussion on this issue. And we asked some questions, and that was the result of some of the emails that I shared today, were the getting answers to those questions. And as Acting Manager Smith indicated, Director Nanny is here, and he seemed to be a great resource as far as specifics on the pilot program and how it works and why it does or why it doesn't work within our township, et cetera. So I highly encourage, if we want to ask any of those deeper pilot questions, that we have the resources here, I think, to get answers.
So does it work in our township? Mr. Nanny, where is he?
He's on.
Director Nanny, can you be?
There he is.
There he
Hey.
is.
Yeah, low-income housing certainly works our terms. These four existing low-income housing projects that we have been successful. They all four were built around the same time. The challenge we have is actually with creating new ones. That parts of the state's rules, the Michigan State Housing Development Authority's rules, Michigan, have changed over the years. They've also have recategorized our area. They're using a new map essentially to determine how to prioritize these types of subsidies for low-income housing. And it has made it much harder to develop new housing here. We just had actually a meeting not too long ago with a developer who works in multiple states. They have a strong presence in Michigan. They have strong interest in our community. I have met with them at an economic development conference and invited them to come look at our community. And they were very interested. But what they found was that they could not make the numbers work. There was a more than $1 million, over $2 million gap. There's a $1.8 million gap that based on the current scoring criteria from Michigan, they simply were not able to make work in terms of state subsidy, tax credits, all that sort of thing. So until those state scoring criteria change, new housing in the low-income category is going to be difficult to build, and it makes preserving these existing facilities all that much more important.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So I know, I'm not sure who's best to answer this, and maybe I should have thought of this question a couple days ago, but I really appreciate having the numbers as far as the breakdown on going from a 10 or 9% down to 4%. You can extrapolate from that if we chose to do something different, like a 5% or whatever it is. I mean, you get an idea of what each percentage point, how that affects the different taxing entities. As I've read through this, what I've gleaned from this is the applicant has basically said, we were starting to roll this into traditional housing, not low income. And they understood that this township values low income housing availability. And so they were open to the idea of looking at this, and that led to the request of the reduction down to the 4%. Is that accurate so far? Okay, so with that, doing that, my initial concern in seeing this was townships in a very good financial state. The $2,800 is not going to make or break our township. There is potential, maybe, in looking at the schools, right? The schools, we're looking at potentially, was that $33,000 reduction if we were to make that change.
And what is the percentage of what they get now? How much are we cutting this back? You know, they annually get 2 million, well, now they're getting this much less. What percentage less? No, I mean,
As a percentage?
the school is getting this much less, but that's 2% of what they
No.
normally get annually.
Oh,
Yes,
Okay.
yeah,
that I don't know.
yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's a huge thing.
Agreed. And I'm not sure how, if any of these are really a major factor to any
Right.
of these entities.
Right.
Obviously, I would think if I'm the school district, I'm interested, but it's not going to make or break.
Right.
Is that a way to put it?
Yep.
But my question, I have a much better understanding of what that revenue decrease would be based on awarding a 4% pilot. If these were to return to traditional housing, do we have any feeling for what the reverse effect would be? Obviously, I'm assuming it goes on the normal tax rolls, it gets assessed normally. You're paying traditional property tax. Is that accurate, what happens?
That is correct in a sense. If they were to complete the process with VISTA to pull these properties out of the low-income housing rent restrictions, they would be required to go through a 3-year phase-in for that, where our pilot would still apply, they would still have the tax exemption, and they'd have to keep a certain amount in low-income housing. After that 3-year period, the property would be reassessed and would be subject to our current property tax rates for market rate multiple family housing. So it would be a significant increase at that point after the 3-year phase-in. Would be a significant bump in tax revenues from those properties.
Thank you. So, in a market such as Mount Pleasant, where we've seen a decline in CMU attendance, we seem to have an abundance of housing. And what's happened is the traditional transient housing for students has become family housing or young professional housing. And so what I just heard in confirmation of my thought process is if they were to roll these into normal properties, meaning not low income, they're now put in a level playing field with the rest of the apartment market, correct? Okay, I'm just trying to understand the landscape here, so thank you for that.
And there's probably not a way to know what percentage of our total, what we can call low-income housing, these units represent.
I'm sure that number's
It is-
somewhere.
Well, we listed all of our subsidized housing, low-income housing. There are the four, and we are looking at 3 of them, 3 of the 4. So this is 75% roughly.
Okay, I didn't know about capacity, yeah, okay.
And the other thing I've learned through this process, which I didn't know, because I know there are cases where you have low-income housing where you might have 6 units that are low-income and 30 that are not. In these cases, as I understand it, so correct me if I'm wrong, I'm asking for correction, 100% of these units on all 3 of these, trying to think of the names again, so forgive me, Springbrook, 1 and 2, and the Cranberry?
Cranbrook.
Cranbrook, thank you. All 3 of those are 100% low-income units, correct?
Okay, but that's huge.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It said about 137 units, I believe.
Total.
Yeah,
And one of those, the Cranbrook then, is the senior one.
Mhm.
right.
And so the people that are being assisted by this are people that are on fixed income and probably aren't gonna, they're not in a position to really probably change their income in any way.
No.
Right. When do they want an answer?
We asked that question too. I think, just a little background, when Trustee Rogers, Clerk Cody, and myself were asking some of these questions in our meeting to better understand it, we asked the question, When do they need an answer by? And I think the response I got, and, Director Nanny, I'll give you a chance to jump in. Maybe you should just answer it. Maybe I'll let you answer it.
Well, I had several meetings with the owners as we've been talking through this. They have, as was already said, they have explored or started the process to look at transition to market-based housing. But that essentially, I'll call it pause. I suppose they will call it that, but I'll call it pause while employing this option. But they are looking to make a decision in the near term. So certainly would say before the end of the first quarter, they're going to decide what the future of these properties are, whether it's in low-income housing as it is or in the transition to market-based. So I would suggest that while you certainly could ponder this a little bit more and hold this up in your next meeting if you choose, I would not recommend going much beyond that, because they really are looking for direction from the township as to our support for keeping these in the low-income housing area.
Okay. I mean, we don't decide tonight,
Thank you, Rodney.
or do we?
We can decide tonight. I think what we just heard is that if we wait beyond, say, like the next meeting, we are sending a signal that we're
Right,
not
we
handling
don't
it quick
care.
enough and they're
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
move on.
Yep.
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to reduce the annual service charge percentage of the annual shelter rent for the Springbrook Townhouse Homes, Phase 1 and 2, low-income housing projects authorized under the tax exemption ordinance number 20-10 as a payment in lieu of taxes pilot from the current 10% to 4%, and to adopt updated pilot resolutions for Phase 1 and 2 that reflect the percentage charge.
Second?
Change. Motion by Brown, support by Rogers. Discussion.
I think it's very, very important that we keep our low-income housing in our community, what little bit we have, wish we had more, because we do need it. And it'd be a tragedy, I think, to lose these units, or even one of them. So that's why I made the motion, and I'm definitely for it.
Others?
My concern is, it's my understanding that after a certain amount of time, new residents would be subject to rent increases. Was I understanding that correctly?
I know the case, if they get the approval through MISTA to go to normal income, then they begin to
Okay.
roll into normal apartment units.
But they're not going to raise the rent if they stay low income.
I don't know the answer to that. Do either of you happen to know that?
I think they have the ability to, is that correct, Rodney, after 3 years?
Right. What we're talking about here is specifically for Springbrook. You have that draft agreement there, and what that was adjusting the income levels that would apply to certain units. And it's only certain units. There's only
Right.
a small portion
Okay.
that are at that very low income. And those would be allowed to adjust as Aggie Manager said after that 3-year period, just for those units that are
Okay.
at that very low level.
Does that answer your question?
They answered my question.
Trustee Landon?
I'd just like to express my belief that low-income housing is very, very important for our community, as well as nationwide. Low-income housing is, there's fewer units available than are needed. And it indicates we have 4 complexes in this town, and out of 3 of them we have 137 units. But just so happens when I was going through and campaigning and knocking on doors, I went through these facilities, and what struck me was the the various ages of the people there, from young folks to young families to middle-aged folks to some older folks. And in speaking with them, they're working people in the community, may also be going to school, maybe holding 2 or 3 jobs, but the jobs they have just don't afford them to pay market-based price rents. And the need is obviously here, and it's so important to assure that it stays here. Although there, of course, are no assurances, but I just wanted to let you know my point of view that this is very, very important. But then I also have some questions. Kind of going back, just if anybody had history. I say who and why. Who probably would have been the board here. Made the decisions back in '05, but why was 10% and 9% determined? My understanding is these pilot service fees generally range between 10 and 4%. And so, you know, they're asking for 4. It could be 4. Could it be 3? Could it be 2? Do we have the flexibility of going below what they requested? Okay. And Kim, I was just hoping you'd...
Can I try answering part of your question too?
Sure.
So why 10 initially?
Yeah.
And I'll ask Director Nanny to jump in if he thinks I'm wrong. But this is what I've begun to learn over the last week. When the pilot was initially undertaken and these units were built, at that time they were given a 10-year income tax credit on those properties. And so that was their major incentive to build these and make these low-income housing. That has since subsided. And now that they're no longer getting that income tax credit, and they have upkeep because all these units are at that age where they're really beginning to need that. That's where it's common to make a change in the pilot service fee to allow that to help cover those costs of reinvestment into that property. Is that a reasonable description, Director Nanny?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Does that help answer that?
Yep. But I
So
also...
it's just at that age, right? Trustee Landon, it's at that age where it's not uncommon to request it.
So the income tax credit went away. This is something allowable by law, as any good business would do. They're looking at all options to reduce their operational cost. Understand that. Kim, I was hoping you would clarify for me, when you talked about the 10%, I was thinking it's based on property taxes, but you had said it's based on rental
Yeah, it's called-
receipts?
Well, if you look at the write-up that Rodney provided, it's actually called, let me get the correct name. It's called the annual service charge, and there's a
Right.
calculation for that. So if you look at page 27 of your packet, there's a calculation there that shows you how that annual service charge is calculated. They take the gross potential rent, the gain and the loss, then they subtract, the vacancy, any employee unit discounts, which might be a manager or maybe a maintenance person that lives on site. Any rent that they have to write off, because I'm sure they still have rents that they don't collect. And then if they collect any, they add that, looks like they add that back in, and they come to that, in this case, it was $387,000. And then they get to subtract some of the utility cost, and then the 10% is based on that number, which ended up being, in this case, $355. So there's a calculation that's done to come to that Yeah,
And
and I
then
know
the-
that that's audited as well, if you know, that those.
Through the
those
state
numbers-
program.
Yes, those numbers all have to be audited.
And it did indicate any savings they would realize would either, one, go back into the physical plant for improvements of whether it's new roofs, new furnaces, that sort of physical plant stuff, or to stabilize or reduce rent cost to,
Well, from the information we received, it was all going to be used, the reason they were undertaking this was they wanted to make improvements to the properties that had been neglected.
right,
So it was for mainly capital needs.
right. I think I read where it could go to rent reduction possibly.
It,
Could be a choice.
it might, I'm sure it could, but it wasn't their intent or what they have portrayed in the letter we got from their attorney.
And I just mentioned, when I was going through there in this past September, there actually was roofing going on. These are some pretty tall structures, and there were sky lifts there, lifting pallets of shingles up to the rooftops. And that just struck me as, this is great. It's a nice facility. Looking at it, you can't tell them that maybe roofing needs to be done, but they're doing some roofing. And so they're keeping it up, and it's a large complex that certainly would not want to see it go into disrepair, and it is serving a vital need of the community.
I drive by these complexes almost every day, more than
Yeah.
once. And, because I'm
Right.
located just down the road, and I have to say, I've noticed in the last year that they have done some work there, so it looks like they are taking this seriously and trying to make improvements to the property. That's just my observation as a person that drives by there. You see people in there doing work. They did some work on the drains. They had some drain issues in that area. I know they took care of those, and so that it does look like they are trying to do some improvements to the properties.
Trustee Brown?
If I may, I want to, Trustee Lannon, I want to piggyback. So this construction that they're talking about, that they want to do we monitor that anyway, at all, except for, of course, inspections? But with this program, do they have, now that they have incentives to do this construction, is there a schedule laid out? Is there a plan laid out what they're going to do over so many years or anything like that? Has that ever been brought in front of us at all, or in front of
To make sure they do the
Director
work.
Nanny?
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware of, no. Maybe Dr. Nanny has a better answer for that.
I would say that what you have is what we've received to this point. Now, certainly as projects require building permits, obviously we deal with those that way. And especially as you mentioned, we have these are all part of our rental certification program, so the entire property has an annual inspection requirement for each unit and for the common areas. So we are watching over the property, but maintenance type work, we don't monitor that project by project. We're looking at the results for those annual inspections.
Fair enough.
So I think the question, if I may, is there accountability that
Thank you.
the
Yes.
money is being used the way they say? And I guess, is there accountability in any way?
Exactly.
Is that something that MISTA does?
Yeah, I will say this, that we are not the only agency involved here, and MISTA is very involved in this process, and so they certainly have accountability. MISTA, they have annual verifications that need to be made to MISTA. MISTA has its own processes for that. For our part, it's really our annual inspections, the rental certification, where we're verifying that things are good order. And the larger projects that require permits, we don't see much over those on an individual basis.
Thank you.
So it does, the gentleman that is on Zoom here is labeled Nathan, I believe, is one of the principals for this project. He may answer the question for you.
Nathan, would you be willing to unmute and join us? You okay with that, board?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I apologize if I didn't want to interrupt, my son's computer here is coming across. Is Nathan, my name is Matt Gephardt. I am the principal owner at Springbrook 1 and 2 in Cranbrook. We also, just for notice, we also own Cambridge Terrace and Arbors, which are pretty much kitty corner to the property that you're speaking of. That property was as well in what they would call the LIHTC program. We removed that from the LIHTC low-income housing program and moved it to market rent. And when we purchased Springbrook 1 and 2, along with Cranbrook, that was our intent as well. We had already submitted into the QCP, which would be to remove the first stage of Springbrook 1 from the low-income housing and move it to market rent. Part of that reason is because of what we paid for the property. The restricted rents are restricted on, I'll try not to get too in detail about it, but are restricted on what they're called AMIs, which are area median incomes. So residents are required to apply and meet area median income restrictions in order to be there. That is how they get into low housing income. Each unit has a different percentage of area median income, from 25 to 60% of what their income needs to be to qualify for that unit. So the idea became, okay, is it possible for us to allow these units, to allow these residents, or allow this property to maintain its low income status and allow us as owners to be able to do the upgrades that need to be done to the facility, and manage it the way it needs to be managed. If we were to leave the pilot as is, if we were to move forward with MISHDA, with the AMI restrictions that they have, we would not be able to do that. So what we did with this, there are two big pieces to this that are allowing us to leave this in low-income housing. One was to work with MISHDA. I think one of the trustees had mentioned, would some of the rents be increased, even though it was low income? And yes, that is a fact, that some would be. So what that means is there are 12 units in Springbrook 1 that are at 25% AMI. So that means these are extremely low-income housing units. And those units would be moved up to the 60% AMI. So you're still talking about individuals that only meet 60% of the area median income that would be required to qualify to live in these units. So it is still low-income housing, but it is not the 25% AMI. So those 12 units would be moved from the 25% restriction up to the 60% restriction. And that was our first step, and MISHDA has approved that. So when you guys ask if we have a time frame set on it, that is one of the main reasons we do. MISHDA wants us to get back to them. We have delayed it through the holidays. They gave us approval to leave it in the low-income housing program before Christmas. It's been delayed, and now here we are. They're just asking, hey, what's the status? So that's the only reason we have a time frame. Can we wait till next meeting? Absolutely. Are we super pressed? Can we push it off, 30 days? Yes, we can do that to accommodate. Not that big of a deal. But that was step one. Step two was to work with the township, see if we could save some dollars on the pilot program, which would allow us to then put money back into the facility. We have about 5,000 units across the state. Several of the properties that we have are low-income housing. We like this type of asset. We like being able to provide this type of asset to the community. So if we can keep this as low income, that would be our preference. We started working with Rodney. Rodney was in favor to help us through the program with you guys. And that's where we're at today. So, you know, I know there's always some skepticism. Will we put the money back into the property? Will we take the money? You know, I understand. I mean, the best thing that I can say is you can see what we've done over the past, 9 months. There will be the rental inspections that happen every year. You will see that the property continues to get better and better all the time. I mean, I don't think there is any way to put a stamped guarantee approval on anything like this saying, yes, every single dollar will be used for X or for improvement. So I'm not going to try to say that's the case. All I can say is that, with the combination of a decrease in the pilot percentage and then a increase in the AMI revenues, it's going to be able to allow us to keep the property in low-income housing and improve the asset for the community, for the people.
Thank you.
Outstanding. Mark, right?
No.
Nathan.
Matt, thank you.
Sorry. Yeah.
Nathan's your son.
Son, right?
Matt, I personally, as a trustee, would just like to thank you for being here tonight and definitely taking your time and explaining yourself. That was very helpful. And I'd also like to thank you for the type of person you are and to want to keep this in our low housing in our community. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I wish I could have been there tonight. I actually flew home. We were out of state, and I flew home with intentions to drop my butt tonight and be there in person, and then the snowstorm hit.
Yes.
Here I am on my son's computer.
Well, feel free. We do this twice a month on Wednesday. You can stop by anytime and see us. We'd love to see you.
Well, my daughter is nephew, Violet, Earl, so we are there often.
Great.
Ah.
Yeah.
Love to meet you personally. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
Before you go, Matt, just to make sure there's no other questions that trustees have for you specifically, if you're okay with that?
Yeah, I'd like to ask Mr. Gephardt a question.
I was trying to touch on, yeah, absolutely.
First of all, just curious as to the percentage you came up with, trying to reduce the service fee down to 4%.
Honestly, typically what we see is anywhere between 4 and 10, which I think was stated earlier. That is pretty much the standard across the board that you will see in any municipality. Honestly, it's not a huge amount of money for us. So the more savings that we can get, I mean, if you were to approve, I understand you could approve 5%, 6%, 7%. The more money that we can get back or have in savings, the more money we can put into the property, the faster things can take natural course. We're businessmen. We're not gonna hurt ourselves or put ourselves in a bad situation with the bank. Because essentially they're the ones we answer to, right? We have loans with the bank. We have to meet those loans and the covenants of those loans first and foremost. The faster that we can have the revenue in hand to be able to improve the facilities, the faster things will move along. So we went to which I believe is the lowest possible percentage for the pilot, which is 4%.
Okay. I just want to mention that our township isn't the ones who will possibly take the biggest reduction. by lowering the service charge. The county's involved, the city's involved. And so we're kind of fiduciarily responsible to think about how it's going to impact the other municipalities. And so that's why some of the questions come up, you know, as I had mentioned. I think this is absolutely important when you're looking at the Section 8 involvement that goes on with low income housing. Again, this is so vitally necessary for
There's just not enough.
our town. And but just to mention, quick calculations on these three properties, it is looking at about $850,000 over 15 years of tax money that will impact our local area. And but again, so important. Just curious, I don't know, maybe it's none of my business, but are you looking at the same program at some of your other 7 cities that you're working in?
I'm sorry, same program?
Looking where you have low income housing units in other cities, are you also looking at some requests for those properties as well?
Yes, absolutely, we are. We have good connections with NISHDA. That has allowed us to, so just to back up a little bit, I'm not a developer. Like was mentioned in earlier in the meeting, a lot of the developers of these properties are not managers. They don't want to manage the property. They want to develop the property for the initial tax benefit. Once that time frame wears off, they are interested in selling. I am a manager. I own a lot of market rent units, and then I take over the properties and manage them as well. We have done it both ways. We've removed some from the market or from the low income housing and put it into market rent, and then some of them we have left. We have kind of changed what our initial thought was and are now more in that aspect of we want to leave them in the low income housing, try to help the communities, and see if we can't, as businessmen, still make our side profitable and provide for the community low income housing. So yes, that is now the goal that we are trying to move forward with in several other cities.
I appreciate your candor and the letter you sent along. A lot of valid points and laid out a pretty clear picture for us, your position and your need.
I have to thank Rodney on that. He helped nurse us through what would be best to present to you guys so that you could get a full understanding of what we're trying to do.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
No.
I was more than happy to make this motion. Now I'm really glad.
Yeah.
So we have a motion and a second, do we?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
can call the
first.
question if people are ready. I just want to make sure people have the ample opportunity
I'm
to
good.
feel they're informed.
Don't forget, Lisa wants a roll call, because this is
Yeah,
the resolutions.
And this
Yep.
is for
Um,
Springbrook, phase 1 or
Yep.
2.
Yep.
Yes. All right, well, I'll just say before, if it's okay, before we take a vote, I've struggled with this a little bit because of the comments made earlier by Trustee Brown, Trustee Lannon, the importance of offering this to our community as far as low-income housing is crucial in my mind. But as Trustee Lannon also mentioned, where I've struggled a lot this past week looking at this is the decrease in revenues to the taxing entities. And looking at the breakdowns that we have, the one most affected by that is our local schools. But I think Treasurer Rogers' point is also valid that these are pretty small drops in the bucket. And the county was one because of all they've been through this past year, a big concern of mine, and their total loss is in the neighborhood of, it's under $6,000. And I don't think that's gonna make or break where the county's at right now.
No.
And so I feel a lot better about this as well because of the importance of having this. So, Matt, I'm really thankful that you're considering this rather than taking it and put it into the open market. Appreciate, and I wish you, if this passes, I wish you well in keeping this in our community.
Thank you so much. Greatly appreciate you guys and your time.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Anybody else?
Okay.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor by Trustee Brown, supported by, was it Trustee
It was.
Treasurer Rogers? Thank
yep.
you. Thank you. Anybody unclear to the motion, going from 10 to 4% for Springbrook 1 and 2? Would you do a roll call of
Yes,
the
I
board,
can.
please?
Supervisor Milky,
Yes.
Treasurer Rogers,
Yes.
Trustee Brown,
Yes.
Trustee Lannon,
Yes.
Trustee Lay is a yes, Trustee Thering.
Yes.
We have 6 yeas, and no nays.
Thank you very much.
Very welcome.
That brings us to new business. Item B, Cranbrook Senior Living Pilot Percentage Reduction Request. Acting Manager Smith, I assume you don't have a lot to add to this?
No, nothing to add.
Happy to entertain any motions
I
or,
move that we reduce the annual service charge percentage of annual shelter rent for the Cambridge Senior Village Low-Income Housing Project authorized under tax exemption ordinance number 2010 as a payment in lieu of taxes pilot from the current 9% to 4%, and to adopt an updated pilot resolution that reflects the percentage change.
Support.
motion by Rogers, support by Brown. Discussion?
It's about the same thing, but it's
It's the
same
our,
thing,
it's our
different property,
elders,
right.
which is even worse.
It's the
Yeah.
same thing.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, there's no
Yeah.
getting around that. We need more housing like this.
Agreed. Anybody else? We have a motion on the floor. Anybody not clear on the motion? Would you do a roll call of the
I will
board,
do
please?
a roll call, if I can find my little sheet, but I know everybody. Supervisor Milky,
Yes.
Treasurer Rogers,
Yes.
Trustee Brown,
Yes.
Trustee Lannon,
Yes.
Trustee Lay is a yes, Trustee Thering,
Yes.
right?
Motion passes unanimously.
Yes.
Outstanding.
Thank you.
Yay.
Moving on then, I just asked to put this on our agenda. We don't have to take a lot of time, or we can choose to take a lot of time. But we had our policy governance training 2 weeks ago. And I just wanted the opportunity for us to debrief if there was something, debriefing that anybody felt they needed. Did you take away something from that that you think we should change or do better, or I don't know where your thoughts are at? But I wanted you the opportunity to talk about it if you had something to say. So I'll kind of open up the floor on that.
It
I
was,
have-
Good.
it was
I-
excellent.
She does a wonderful job.
Yeah, she does.
Yes.
So I have one for lack of a better term, observation that I took from this. I took several notes as we were going through it that I'm like, oh, yeah. I mean, as many times as I've been through that training, I always pick up something new. And that's even a high level training, right? But being that this is a new board, there's new complexion to it than there was 3 months ago. You know, each year we go through our ends and we reevaluate our ends, and those ends help drive our budget process, right? Where we put our money, because our money speaks to where our priorities are. This board is in a position where we came in and we had to have agreed at least some form of governing process together. This is how we're gonna operate for now. But there are new members on here. Like I said, this is a new board. Do the ends that we have now make sense to this board? And so I thought, even though we're scheduled to look at ends later in the year, is it worth visiting those in any depth together prior to that? I'm asking the question. If not, we'll wait until, is it May, I think?
Yeah, I think
When we
it's May.
begin to get into the ends.
Probably
Well,
good.
for me,
We can just preview it, preview it in the meantime, and
That's
see
right.
what thoughts we have,
Is
yeah.
it worth kind of going through it
Yeah, well, I mean,
as an agenda item and just, that way you can start thinking about it, and maybe when we get to May, we go,
Right.
yeah, I've thought about this one, and I'd like to change this one, for example.
it's no
or-
harm.
I'd like to see him, I'd like to have him in front of me in that respect, you know.
Okay, so at least some discussion as an agenda item? Okay. Trustee Landon?
I actually was kind of looking at the ends earlier in in this term, as I was reading through the book we were all issued on policy governance. And just a thought I came up with, you know, I was going through what we had and was thinking, what are we missing here?
Yeah, that's the hard part.
Or what don't we need that's there? And I was going through that, and one of the concepts that came to my mind was talking about egalitarian government. I'm having a tough time saying that in the school day.
Egalitarian?
Egalitarian government. And that speaks to the principle of believing in the principle that all people are equal and deserve equal rights and opportunities. And then I got thinking about civic. And civic is of or relating to a citizen, a city, a citizenship, or community affairs. And then I was thinking about democracy came up, a form of government in which people choose leaders by voting. And so maybe it's an umbrella thing over our ends, but the thought that I was just kind of brewing in my mind was that, you know, we operate as a democracy, you know, we all have a voice, and we need to ensure that that is how we operate. Was just the thoughts I was going through. I'm not going to expand any more on that at all, but I just wondered if in an ends something along those lines
I
would be
say
interesting.
put some thought into it.
Yeah.
Which, to that, not as an end, but one of the reasons I really like policy governance is it equalizes everybody on this board, because there are statutes in Michigan law that give extra power to, for lack of a better term, the three officers, the supervisor, clerk, and the treasurer. And it is not uncommon in townships for the supervisor to be,
Dictator.
what's that?
Dictator?
Yeah, a king, more of a king,
Well,
and you see that a
yeah.
lot. And policy governance takes that power away from the supervisor. You know, one of my obligations is to be chair, but other than that, we become equal voices, right? We all have an opportunity, so that speaks to that. It's more democratic to me. So, along the lines of ends, one of the things that Sue Radwin talks about, is it Sue or Susan she goes by?
I think Susan.
Susan, is part of one of the concepts behind the benefit of policy governance is it keeps us, one, out of the weeds, right? So you're not spending all your time
The minutia.
in minutia, and that we get to spend more time looking at the big picture. So it gets real easy for us to get lazy and let things just kind of run and just monitor, right? But it's also our duty, I think, to dream. And sometimes it's healthy just to have brainstorming sessions about where we want to see this township.
Be
Right.
proactive instead of reactive.
Yes, and I think it'd be healthy if we're having like a preview of ends to also piggyback onto that. Just not just ends, but more visionary talk about where we as a board want to help drive this township. Because we haven't had those discussions, this body at least,
Right.
right? And I think it'd be healthy to have that. And it can be small things. It can be things, I think we need to do better at this. I think we spend too much time on this, right? Are you all aware, looking more at the newer members here, that the township has done surveys, 3 surveys over time? Was that part of your packet, was the survey results?
I don't know if it was part of the packet, but I remember getting the survey.
You do?
Yes.
Oh.
I filled it out and sent it back.
Yeah, we did, about a year and a half ago? Is that right?
Was
Year
it that
ago?
long ago already?
I don't know.
I feel like it was like a
Seems
it
like
feels like it was a
a
year.
couple months ago.
Time has no meaning anymore.
In any event, I'll try to look up and find those. Obviously, the ones we did, I'm ballparking here, 9 years ago, are a little less relevant. But for some of the similar questions, you can see trends potentially in what's important, what's not important to our residents.
I think that the surveys are actually
Online.
on the website. Yeah,
Oh, they are?
I wasn't sure if the old ones were,
It
but I just
was
looked at one, I just looked at the.
2023.
So that's the one we just, yeah, that's one.
Yeah, I think if you haven't seen that, it's worth going through and seeing those results. And I hope there's the write-up that was done that kind of gives the big picture of it.
There's an 83-page report.
Oh,
Um,
it's for light reading.
Yeah, but to me, I really rely on what I've learned from that because it is our residents speaking,
Yeah,
saying
right.
blight's important, roads
Yep.
are important, you know,
Yep.
what is important to them, and what isn't. So I think that's worth looking at if you haven't already. So we good on this topic?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'll request that we get a time in the next month or so to kind of just go through some brainstorming and review the ends, just so we know where they're at. By the way, we have our joint meeting April, right? April 10th or something like that. I have the date wrong, I'm sure, but
What's the
the
joint meeting?
joint meeting is the joint of all the boards, so we invite Planning Commission, EDA,
Oh, right.
ZBA, et cetera, et cetera. Typically, there's 1, 2, 3 members from each board that come, sometimes more. We like to encourage more.
Right.
But it's an opportunity to hear about the past year, and more importantly, hear like from the Planning Commission on where they'd like to see the township go this next year, what they're gonna be working on. It is an opportunity to interact with ownership, because all these people that serve on our boards are residents of Union Township. And so the reason that is scheduled in April is then we can use that as one extra data point as we look at what's important to our board,
Right.
and how we build our budget. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so moving on then. That brings us to item 12 on the agenda, extended public comment. Extended public comments restricted to 5 minutes regarding any issue. If you choose to address the public, please state your name and address for the record. And with that, at 8:32 p.m., we'll open up extended public comment.
The only two online are Rodney and Tara.
And you, I see. Let the record show no one is coming forward in person and nobody's raising their hand online. So we'll close extended public comment at 8:33 p.m. That brings us to acting manager's comments.
I don't have anything for tonight. Thank you. Everybody drive home safely.
Yeah.
I just like to give a thank you to Acting Manager Smith. I think you were very helpful in our meeting Monday, which is our team meeting that we typically have with Mark rather than Director Smith. It seems whenever Rodney is the acting manager, I never have to bother him. I don't, but every time you are, I'm on the phone with you way too much.
That's right. No. Thank you.
But I appreciate your support.
I'm glad to give it.
Thank you. Final board member comment. Trustee Brown.
Yeah, be safe, and I wanted to thank the Union Township employees for having the lot nice and clear. All the lots as I came in look great. They're on it. Thank you.
Trustee Landon?
So I was just going to mention, if you didn't know, Union Township's birthday is coming up. Union Township was formally established in 1861 on March 9th. So that puts it at about 163 years. Because it was 100 years before my birthday, and I know how old I am. But if you guys remember when we came in, Manager Stool Dryer mentioned, I wish I could say welcome to the 49th
Yeah.
Congress of Union Township.
Yeah.
Now we know.
But so we've been around about 163 years, and if they did boards on 4-year terms, like we do, from the beginning, we would be about the 41st Board of Trustees of Union Township. So happy birthday to the township.
What was the date? 1861?
March 9th, 1861. And enjoy the winter weather. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Trustee Lake?
It has been a pleasure to be your clerk for the evening, and everyone be very, very careful.
Treasurer Rogers?
Safe travels.
Trustee Therian?
I think there's some signatures that need to happen on, over here.
There'll be the minutes and then the resolutions.
The resolutions, yeah, if we don't sign them now, you'll come back tomorrow to sign them, so.
Yeah, I think the ones that made the motion, if
Okay.
you can
Yeah.
get them on the way out.
Yep.
So that made the motion and support.
Okay.
Thanks for that.
That's it.
And I'll come in tomorrow and Tara will get signatures on minutes. All right, me. I really appreciate all the good discussion tonight. The pilot thing was really tough for me. But I believe we made the right choice.
Yep.
And with that, drive safe. We can be adjourned if there's a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn?
Support.
We have a motion to adjourn by Rogers, support by Brown. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. We're adjourned at 8:36 PM.
I will need to borrow someone's scraper.